The bullet hit the barn door 3 inches from Lila Grayson's head. She didn't scream, couldn't. Her lungs had stopped working the moment she saw them. 5 men on horseback, silhouettes against the dying sun, rifles gleaming. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not here, not in Wyoming. She'd run 2,000 miles to disappear, married a stranger to vanish. But her father's sins had longer legs than she ever imagined. Now they wanted payment. And the man beside her, Ethan Cole, the rancher she'd known for 72 hours, was the only thing standing between her and a shallow grave. Before we begin, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these tales travel. 3 days earlier. The stagecoach lurched over another pothole, and Lila's stomach followed half a second later. She pressed her palm against the worn leather seat, steadying herself, trying not to look at the woman across from her who'd been staring for the past hour. "First time out west?" the woman finally asked. Her voice carried that particular brand of nosiness that Lila had learned to recognize back in Philadelphia, the kind that came wrapped in politeness but landed like an interrogation. "Yes, ma'am." "Mail order bride?" Lila's jaw tightened. "Yes." The woman's eyes did what they always did, traveled down, assessed, calculated. Lila knew what she saw. A woman who didn't fit the picture. Too heavy, too plain, too wrong for the romantic notion of a frontier bride stepping delicately into her new life. "Well," the woman said, settling back into her seat with a small, pitying smile, "I'm sure he's practical." Lila turned toward the window, watching Wyoming roll past in shades of brown and gray. Practical. That was one word for it. Desperate was another. The letter had been specific. Ethan Cole, rancher, recently widowed, needs help managing property. No children, fair terms. It hadn't said looking for love or seeking companionship, just needs help. That suited Lila fine. She wasn't looking for romance. She was looking for distance. 2,000 miles felt like enough. The stagecoach rattled into Bitter Springs just after noon. The town was smaller than Lila had imagined. One main street, buildings that looked like they'd been thrown up in a hurry and never quite finished. Dust hung in the air, coating everything in a film of grit. Lila climbed down from the coach, her legs shaky after days of travel. Her trunk followed with a heavy thud that drew looks from the handful of people on the street. She pretended not to notice the stares, the quick whispers behind hands. "You Miss Grayson?" She turned. The man was tall, weathered in the way frontier men got weathered, sun-beaten skin, lines around his eyes that came from squinting at horizons. He wore his hat low, and his expression gave away exactly nothing. "Mr. Cole?" He nodded once. His eyes did the same assessment everyone else's did, but his face didn't change. No surprise. No disappointment. Just nothing. "Wagons this way." He picked up her trunk like it weighed nothing and started walking. Lila followed, acutely aware of every eye on the street tracking her movement. A woman leaning in a doorway actually laughed. A quick, sharp sound that cut through the afternoon heat. The wagon was old but sturdy. Ethan loaded her trunk into the back with efficient movements, then offered his hand to help her up. His grip was calloused, firm. They rode in silence. Lila watched the town fall away behind them, replaced by endless plains that stretched to mountains in the distance. The sky was bigger here than it had any right to be. Back home, buildings boxed it in, made it manageable. Here, it pressed down with all that empty space. "Ranch is about an hour out," Ethan said finally. His voice was low, measured. "Got 60 acres. Cattle, mostly. Some horses. House needs work." "I can work." He glanced at her. "You done ranch work before?" "No." "Any kind of farm work?" "No." "Can you ride?" Lila's cheeks burned. "I'll learn." Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face, but it was gone before she could be sure. "It's hard out here. Harder than Philadelphia." She stiffened. "How did you—" "Your letters. You mentioned the city." "Right. The letters. 3 of them, carefully worded, revealing almost nothing. She'd been vague about her past, and he hadn't pushed. That had been part of the appeal. "I'm not afraid of hard work," she said. "Didn't say you were." He paused. "But being willing and being able are different things." "I'm able." We'll see. The ranch came into view as the sun started its descent toward the horizon. It was modest. A house that had seen better days, a barn that leaned slightly to the left, fencing that needed repairs. It wasn't the prosperous spread she'd imagined from his letters, but it wasn't destitute either. It was functional. Surviving. Like her. Ethan helped her down from the wagon. I'll show you the house. You'll have the bedroom. I'll take the loft in the barn until... He stopped, seemed to reconsider. Until you're comfortable. That's not necessary. It's necessary. His tone left no room for argument. The house was sparse. A main room with a fireplace, a small kitchen, one bedroom barely big enough for the bed, and a chest of drawers. Everything was clean but worn. A man's space, not a home. There's a well out back, Ethan said. Pump works fine. Outhouse is past the barn. I usually eat at dawn and dusk. Simple food. If you want to cook different, that's fine. Lila set her bag on the bed. When do we... the arrangement. Do we need to... sign papers? Ethan leaned against the door frame. Can do that tomorrow. Pastor comes through once a month. He'll be here in 2 weeks if you want to make it official. And if I change my mind before then? His expression didn't shift. Then I'll take you back to town. No hard feelings. Just like that? Just like that. He pushed off the door frame. I'm not looking to trap anyone, Miss Grayson. I need help on this ranch. You needed somewhere to go. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, no harm done. Except there was harm. If Lila went back to Bitter Springs, she'd be visible again, traceable. And the men her father had crossed didn't forget debts, even when the debtor was dead. It'll work, she said, more firmly than she felt. I'll make it work. Ethan studied her for a moment, and Lila had the uncomfortable feeling he saw more than she wanted him to. All right then, get settled. Dinner in an hour. He left her alone in the small room. Lila sat on the bed, it creaked but held, and let herself take a real breath for the first time in weeks. She'd made it. 2,000 miles from Philadelphia, from the creditors and the threatening letters and the men who'd started watching her father's house before he died. Out here, she was nobody. Just another mail-order bride trying to make a life. She could disappear here. She had to. The first day was a disaster. Ethan woke her before dawn with a knock on the door. Cows need feeding. Lila stumbled out of bed, still half asleep, and followed him to the barn. The work was immediate, physical, and completely foreign. She couldn't lift the feed bags he tossed around like pillows. She spooked the horses, trying to brush them down. When he put her on a mare named Daisy, gentlest horse I got, Lila lasted about 3 minutes before sliding off sideways into the dirt. Ethan helped her up without comment. You hurt? Just my pride. Pride doesn't count out here. He dusted off his hands. Try again. By noon, Lila's muscles screamed. By evening, she could barely lift her arms. Ethan made dinner, venison stew, simple and filling, and they ate in silence. He didn't ask if she was okay, didn't offer sympathy. Just handed her a tin of salve for her blisters and said, same time tomorrow. The second day was worse. Everything hurt. But Lila dragged herself out of bed anyway, because quitting meant going back, and going back meant being found. She fell off Daisy twice, dropped a bucket of water she'd spent 10 minutes pumping, tore her skirt on a fence post. The third day, something shifted. Not her skill, that was still terrible, but her determination hardened into something colder, meaner. When she fell off Daisy, she got up faster. When her hands bled from the work, she wrapped them and kept going. When Ethan looked at her like he was calculating how long until she quit, she stared back until he looked away first. That evening, he said, You're stubborn. Yes? Good. Stubborn survives out here. It was the closest thing to a compliment she'd gotten. On the fourth day, riders came. Lila was in the garden, trying to learn the difference between weeds and actual plants, when she heard hoofbeats. 3 men on horseback rode up to the house. They wore suits too fine for ranch work, and their horses were too clean for a long ride. Wrong. Everything about them felt wrong. Ethan came out of the barn, his posture shifting into something guarded. Help you, gentlemen? The lead rider dismounted. He was older, silver-haired, with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ethan Cole? That's right. Name's Dawson. I'm with the Territorial Land Office. He pulled papers from his saddlebag. There's been some questions about your claim here. Previous owner had some irregularities in the title transfer. Lila's hand stilled in the dirt. She knew a shakedown when she heard one. Ethan's voice stayed level. My deed's legal, recorded proper. I'm sure it is. Dawson's smile widened. But these things require verification. Could take months. Meanwhile, there's an alternative. Which is? Sell. Fair price. No hassle. Not interested. Dawson's smile finally faded. Mr. Cole, I'm trying to help you avoid complications. Appreciate it. Answer's still no. The silence stretched tight. One of Dawson's men let his hand drift toward his belt. Not to a gun, too obvious, but the threat was clear enough. Lila stood up. She didn't plan it. Her body just moved, putting herself in view, making herself known. Dawson's eyes locked onto her. His expression changed, just for a second, surprise flickering through. And who's this? My fiancée, Ethan said, the word coming out flat and certain. Private business. Of course. Dawson mounted his horse, but his eyes stayed on Lila. We'll be in touch about that title issue, Mr. Cole. Soon. They rode off, dust trailing behind them. Lila waited until they disappeared over the ridge before she spoke. That wasn't about land titles. No. Ethan turned to her. Who are you running from? Her throat went tight. What makes you think you don't sleep? You jump at sounds, and you just put yourself between me and trouble without thinking. He crossed his arms. So I'll ask again, who are you running from? Lila could lie. Should lie. But the look in Ethan's eyes told her he'd know. My father owed money. A lot of it. To the wrong people. He pay them back? He died first. And they think you have it. I don't. He gambled it away, drank the rest, but they don't believe me. She wrapped her arms around herself. They think he hid something, that I know where it is. Do you? No. Ethan studied her for a long moment. Those men just now, they with your father's creditors? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe they're just land grabbers and it's a coincidence. You believe in coincidences? No. Me neither. He looked toward where the riders had vanished. They know you're here now. Saw you. Fear spiked through her chest. I can leave. Tonight. You don't need this trouble. Bit late for that. Ethan's voice was calm, matter of fact. They saw you here as my fiancé. I send you away now. I look weak. Weak gets you eaten alive out here. So what do? We stick to the plan. 2 weeks, pastor comes, we make it legal. Harder to intimidate a married woman with a husband backing her. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. He met her eyes. I'm choosing to. You came here honest about wanting work. You've worked hard, haven't complained. That's more than most. Least I can do is not throw you to wolves. Lila's eyes burned. Why? Ethan's expression softened, just barely. My wife, my first wife, she came out here from Boston. Hated every minute of it, the work, the isolation, the hardship. But she tried until it broke her. He paused. You remind me of her, not in looks, in the trying. What happened to her? Winter fever, 3 years ago. He turned toward the house. Get cleaned up. I'll make dinner. Tomorrow we start teaching you to shoot. Shoot? Can't protect yourself if you can't shoot. He paused at the door. And Lila, whatever your father was into, whatever those men want, it ends here. Nobody runs you off this land. Understand? She nodded, not trusting her voice. That night, Lila lay awake listening to the wind howl across the plains. In Philadelphia, there had been ambient noise, horses, voices, the constant hum of city life. Here, there was just space and silence and the occasional cry of something wild in the dark. She thought about Dawson's eyes. The recognition there. They knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. And if they knew, others would follow. Lila had thought distance would save her, but distance was just geography. And the past had a way of closing gaps, no matter how far you ran. The shooting lessons started at dawn. Ethan set up bottles on fence posts, handed Lila a revolver that felt absurdly heavy in her hand. It's going to kick, he said. Don't fight it. Let it happen. The first shot nearly knocked her on her back. The bullet went wide, nowhere near the target. Again. She fired. Missed. Again. Missed. Your stance is wrong. Here. He stepped behind her, adjusting her feet, her shoulders. His hands were impersonal, clinical. Hold it firmer. Don't anticipate the kick. She tried again. This time the bottle shattered. Better. He stepped back. Keep practicing, every morning until you can hit 5 out of 6. It took a week. A week of sore shoulders and ringing ears and fingers that cramped from gripping too hard. But on the 7th morning, she hit 5 bottles in a row. Ethan nodded. Good enough. Just good enough? Perfect gets you killed while you're aiming. Good enough keeps you alive. He collected the gun. Town run tomorrow. Need supplies. You'll come. Is that safe? Safer than hiding. People need to see you're not afraid. But she was afraid. Terrified. The thought of walking through Bitter Springs with everyone staring, judging, whispering, it made her stomach turn. I'll be fine here, she said. You don't need... Not a request. Ethan's voice was firm. You're going to be my wife in less than a week. People need to see that. Need to see you're real, not some secret he's keeping. He was right. She knew he was right. But that didn't make it easier. Bitter Springs looked the same as it had when she'd arrived. Same dusty street, same suspicious eyes. But this time, Ethan walked beside her, his presence a solid weight that drew different kinds of looks. They went to the general store first. The owner, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, watched them enter with undisguised curiosity. Ethan, Miss Grayson. Frank. Ethan handed him a list. Need these supplies. Put it on my account. Frank's eyes flicked to Lila, then back to the list. Heard you were getting married. 2 weeks. Quick courtship. We correspond for 6 months, Lila said, her voice steadier than she felt. Hardly quick. Frank's eyebrows rose slightly. Right. Well, congratulations. While Frank gathered supplies, Lila wandered the store. It was small, cramped, smelling of tobacco and old wood. She ran her fingers along bolts of fabric, wondering if she'd ever have the skill to make something useful from them. You're the mail-order bride. Lila turned. A woman stood behind her, young, pretty, with carefully styled hair and a dress that was far too nice for a frontier town. I am. I'm Caroline Winters. My father owns the bank. She looked Lila up and down with the same assessing gaze everyone else used. You don't look like what I expected. What did you expect? Someone smaller. Caroline's smile was sharp. Ethan's first wife was quite delicate. Fragile, really. I suppose he wanted something different this time. The insult landed exactly as intended. Lila felt her face flush, but she kept her voice even. I suppose he did. Well, good luck. Ranch life isn't for everyone. Caroline moved past her toward the counter, her skirt swishing. Some people aren't built for it. Ethan appeared at Lila's elbow. Ready? She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Outside, loading supplies into the wagon, Ethan said, Caroline give you trouble? Nothing I couldn't handle. She's been trying to catch a husband for 3 years. Town's too small, prospects too few. Don't take it personal. I won't, but it stung anyway. Not because Caroline was wrong, Lila wasn't delicate, wasn't fragile, wasn't built like a storybook bride. But because the judgment was instant, automatic. One look and people decided who she was, what she could do. They were loading the last crate when the sound of hoofbeats made them both turn. Dawson rode into town with his 2 men, plus 3 more. 6 in total now. They dismounted at the saloon, but Dawson's eyes found Lila immediately. Mr. Cole, he called. Miss Grayson. Ethan's hand found the small of Lila's back, a subtle claim. Dawson. Still thinking about my offer? Still not interested. Dawson walked closer. Up close, Lila could see the calculation in his eyes, the predatory patience. That's unfortunate. You see, I did some checking. Your fiancé here has quite an interesting history. Lila's blood turned cold. Philadelphia, wasn't it? Father was Marcus Grayson, ran up debts all over the city before he died, owing substantial sums to some very persistent creditors. Dawson's smile was a knife. Those creditors have been looking for his daughter, wondering if maybe she inherited something more than debt. She didn't, Ethan said flatly. That's what she says. But you know how it is. Debts need settling, one way or another. The street had gone quiet. People were watching now, drawn by the tension. Her father's debts died with him, Ethan said. That's the law. Law's flexible out here, Mr. Cole, especially when powerful men want something. Dawson turned his attention fully to Lila. You could make this easy. Come back to Philadelphia. Talk to these gentlemen. Clear everything up. No. The word came out before Lila could stop it. Dawson's eyebrows rose. No? I don't know what my father did. Don't know where he put any money, if there even was money. I can't help them. Her voice shook, but she didn't back down. And I'm not going anywhere. Bold words for someone with no protection. She has protection. Ethan's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Me. Dawson laughed. You? One rancher against men with resources, connections? Be realistic, Cole. I'm being realistic. You're standing in a town where everyone knows me, where my family worked this land for 20 years. You're a stranger making threats. Ethan's voice dropped lower, harder. How realistic do you think that ends for you? The silence stretched. Around them, Lila could feel people shifting, watching. The blacksmith had stepped out of his shop. The shopkeepers lined the boardwalk. Bitter Springs was small enough that everyone knew everyone, and strangers making threats didn't sit well. Dawson's jaw tightened. This isn't over. No, Ethan agreed, but it's done for today. Dawson and his men mounted up, rode out slowly, deliberately, making a point. When they were gone, Ethan turned to Lila. Get in the wagon. They rode in silence until the town disappeared behind them. Then Ethan pulled the horses to a stop. I need the truth, he said. All of it. What did your father do? Lila's hands twisted in her lap. He was a bookkeeper, worked for wealthy men, kept their accounts clean. But he saw things. Money moving in ways it shouldn't. Bribes, payoffs, deals that would destroy reputations if they came to light. He tried to blackmail them? No, he tried to report it, went to the authorities. She laughed bitterly. The authorities were in on it. When he realized that, he panicked, started making copies of everything, hiding documents. I think he planned to go to newspapers, make it public, but he died before he could. How? They said his heart gave out, but he was healthy, strong. She met Ethan's eyes. I think they killed him. And the documents? I don't know where they are, if they even exist anymore. Maybe he destroyed them. Maybe they're in some hiding place I never found. Her voice cracked. I searched his house, his office, everywhere I could think of. There was nothing. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. You think those men believe you? No, they think I'm lying, or that I'll remember eventually. She wrapped her arms around herself. That's why I had to leave. They weren't going to stop asking, and now they've found you anyway. I'm sorry. I should have told you everything before I came. Wouldn't have changed anything. Ethan picked up the reins again. You needed somewhere to run. I needed help on the ranch. We both got what we needed. But now you're in danger too. Been in danger before. He clicked his tongue and the horses started moving. Difference is, this time I'm choosing it. Lila watched his profile, the hard line of his jaw, the way his eyes stayed on the horizon. Why? Why what? Why risk this? You don't know me. Don't owe me anything. Ethan was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, my wife, Sarah. When she got sick, I sent for a doctor. Took him 3 days to get here. By then, she was gone. His voice was flat, emotionless. I asked him why he took so long. He said he had other patients, more important cases. What he meant was they paid better. He paused. I couldn't save her because I didn't have enough money, enough influence, enough of whatever makes someone matter to people who have power. So she died alone while I held her hand and promised her help was coming. His hands tightened on the reins. I won't watch someone else get crushed by powerful men because they think they can. Not if I can do something about it. Lila's throat was too tight to speak. They rode the rest of the way in silence. That night, Lila couldn't sleep. She lay in the small bedroom, listening to the house settle around her, thinking about Ethan's words, about his wife dying while rich men's needs came first, about her father, dead in his study with no marks on him but a look in his eyes that haunted her still. She got up, pulled on her robe, and slipped outside. The night was cold, clear. Stars scattered across the sky like broken glass. Lila walked to the fence line, let her eyes adjust to the dark. "Can't sleep?" She jumped. Ethan sat on the porch, barely visible in the shadows. "Didn't mean to wake you," she said. "Wasn't sleeping." He stood, walked over to join her at the fence. "Lot on your mind?" "I keep thinking about what you said, about your wife. I'm sorry. Long time ago now. Doesn't make it hurt less." "No," he agreed. "It doesn't." They stood in comfortable silence. After a while, Lila said, "I'm scared." "Good. Scared keeps you sharp." "I don't know if I can do this." "Be what you need. Be strong enough." Ethan turned to look at her. In the moonlight, his face was all shadows and hard angles. "You've been doing it already. Every day you get up, do the work, don't quit. That's strength. Different from what Caroline Winters thinks strength looks like, maybe. But it's real." "People don't see it that way." "People are idiots." His voice was matter-of-fact. "They see what they expect to see. Let them. You know what you're capable of. That's what matters." Lila wanted to believe him. "What if they come for me? Really come, not just threats?" "Then we'll handle it." "How?" "Same way anyone handles trouble out here. We stand our ground, use what we have, and don't back down." He paused. "You can shoot now. That helps. And you're learning the land, the work. That helps too. And if it's not enough?" Ethan's expression didn't change. "Then we make it enough." Something in his certainty steadied her, not because she believed they were invincible, but because he wasn't pretending it would be easy. He was just refusing to let it be impossible. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not sending me away. Thank you for staying." He looked back at the dark horizon. "It gets lonely out here. Nice to have someone to talk to who isn't a cow." Despite everything, Lila laughed. They stood there until the cold drove them inside, two people who'd been strangers a week ago, now bound together by necessity and something else neither of them had words for yet. Trust, maybe. Or just the recognition that some fights were worth having, even when the odds looked bad. Especially then. The wedding happened on a Thursday. Pastor Morris arrived at the ranch just after dawn, his wagon creaking under the weight of supplies he'd picked up for homesteaders scattered across the territory. He was a weathered man in his 60s, with kind eyes and hands that had seen more manual labor than most men of the cloth. "Ethan," he said, climbing down, "got your message about the ceremony. Appreciate you coming out special." Morris looked at Lila, who stood on the porch in the only decent dress she owned, a simple gray thing that had seen better days. "This the bride?" "Lila Grayson, soon to be Lila Cole." "Pleasure, miss." Morris tipped his hat. "You ready for this? Marriage is a serious business." Lila thought about Dawson and his men, about the way they'd looked at her in town, like she was property to be collected, about the fact that being married to Ethan was the only thing standing between her and whatever fate waited back in Philadelphia. "I'm ready," she said. The ceremony was brief. No flowers, no fancy words, just the three of them standing in the main room while Morris read from a worn Bible and asked the questions that mattered. Do you take this man? Do you take this woman? For better or worse? Worse was already here. Better seemed like a distant possibility. "I do," Lila said. "I do," Ethan echoed. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." Morris smiled. "You may kiss the bride, though I suspect you two have your own way of doing things." Ethan looked at Lila. She looked back. After a moment, he leaned in and pressed a brief, dry kiss to her forehead. It wasn't romantic. It was a seal on a contract, a statement of protection. It would have to be enough. Morris stayed for breakfast, eggs and bacon that Lila had finally learned to cook without burning, and left before noon with a bag of supplies and Ethan's thanks. As his wagon disappeared over the ridge, Lila felt the weight of what they'd just done settle over her shoulders. She was married to a man she'd known for 2 weeks, in a place that still felt foreign and hostile. "You all right?" Ethan asked. "Ask me tomorrow." He almost smiled. "Fair enough. Got work to do? Fence needs mending on the south pasture. You coming?" "You want me to?" 2 sets of hands work faster than one. So Lila followed him out to the pasture, where they spent the afternoon replacing rotted posts and restringing wire. The work was hard, methodical, and exactly what she needed. It kept her hands busy and her mind from spiraling into everything that could go wrong. By evening, her muscles ached in that deep, satisfying way that came from honest labor. They ate dinner in silence. Venison stew again, with bread Lila had baked that morning that was only slightly lopsided, and cleaned up together in a rhythm that was starting to feel almost normal. "I'll take the loft again tonight," Ethan said. "Give you space. We're married now. You don't have to." "I know I don't have to." He hung the dish towel on its peg. "But I'm going to anyway, until you say different." Lila didn't argue. Part of her was relieved. This whole situation was strange enough without adding the complexity of sharing a bed with a man she barely knew. That night, alone in the small bedroom, she stared at the ceiling and thought about the fact that she was now Lila Cole. It should have felt momentous. Instead, it felt like putting on armor, necessary, protective, but not quite her own skin. She wondered if it ever would be. The answer came 3 days later when Dawson returned. Lila was in the garden, fighting with stubborn weeds that seemed to grow back overnight when she heard the horses. 6 riders this time. Dawson and his original men, plus 3 new faces, all of them armed. Ethan was in the barn. Lila dropped her trowel and ran. "Ethan!" He emerged, took one look at her face, and grabbed his rifle from where it leaned against the wall. "Inside now." "No. If they're here for me, inside means you can watch from the window and shoot if things go bad. Outside means you're exposed." His voice left no room for argument. "Inside. Now." Lila ran to the house, positioned herself at the window with the revolver Ethan had taught her to use. Her hand shook as she checked the chamber. 6 bullets. 6 men. The math wasn't good. Dawson dismounted slowly, deliberately, making a show of it. "Mr. Cole, or should I say Mr. and Mrs. Cole, heard you went ahead with the wedding. What do you want, Dawson?" "Just came to deliver a message." Dawson pulled a paper from his coat. "This is a legal summons. Mrs. Cole, Lila Grayson, as she was known, is required to appear in Philadelphia to answer questions regarding her father's estate and outstanding debts. She's not going anywhere. It's not a request. It's a legal order." Ethan's laugh was cold. "Legal order from who? You're not a marshal, not a sheriff, just a man with a piece of paper and some hired guns. The law reaches pretty far these days, Mr. Cole." "So does a bullet." Ethan raised his rifle slightly, not pointing it, but making sure everyone saw it. "And out here, my property rights reach farther than your piece of paper." Dawson's smile thinned. "You're making a mistake." "Wouldn't be my first." One of the new men, younger, twitchy, moved his hand toward his gun. Ethan's rifle snapped up, aimed dead center at the man's chest. "Don't," Ethan said quietly. The man froze. "Smart," Ethan continued. "Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to get back on your horses. You're going to ride out of here. And if I see you on my land again without an actual lawman, I'm going to assume you mean harm and act accordingly. Wyoming's got strong castle doctrine. I can defend my home and my wife from trespassers. That clear enough?" Dawson's jaw worked. "This isn't over." "Keep saying that. Doesn't make it true. There are men in Philadelphia with long memories and deep pockets. They want answers. They'll get them, one way or another." "Then they can write a letter." Ethan's rifle didn't waver. "Now get off my land." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Dawson nodded to his men. They mounted up slowly, making their displeasure obvious. But they left. Ethan didn't lower the rifle until they were out of sight. Then he turned to the house. "Lila!" She came out, the revolver still in her hand. "What do we do?" "We get ready." Ethan headed for the barn. "They'll be back. And next time, they won't just talk." Over the next week, the ranch transformed into something closer to a fortress. Ethan reinforced the doors, added bars to the windows. He moved ammunition into the house, positioned rifles at strategic points. Taught Lila how to reload fast, how to shoot from cover. "You think they'll attack?" she asked one evening, watching him check the perimeter. "I think desperate men do desperate things, and those men look desperate. Because of me. Because of what they think you have." He paused. "Big difference." "Is there?" "Either way, you're in danger." Ethan looked at her. "I was in danger before you showed up. Different kind, maybe. Slower. But ranching's dangerous. Weather, animals, accidents. At least this I can see coming." That's not comforting. Wasn't meant to be, was meant to be honest. Honest. That was something Lila was learning about Ethan. He didn't soften things, didn't pretend the world was kinder than it was, but he also didn't run from hard truths. He met them head on, same way he met everything else. She was starting to respect that, maybe even rely on it. The attack came on a moonless night. Lila woke to the sound of breaking glass. She bolted upright, heart hammering, as Ethan's voice cut through the darkness. "Lila! Get down!" She rolled out of bed, hit the floor as gunfire erupted. The window in the main room shattered. Wood splintered. Men shouted outside. She counted at least 4 voices, maybe more. Ethan appeared in her doorway, rifle in hand. "You armed?" She grabbed the revolver from the bedside table. "Yes." "Stay low. Shoot anything that comes through a window or door that isn't me." He was gone before she could respond. More gunfire. The front door shook under heavy impacts. Lila crawled to the bedroom window, peered out. In the faint starlight, she could see shapes moving, men spreading out, trying to surround the house. Her hands steadied. Fear was still there, cold and sharp in her chest, but underneath it was something harder. Anger. These men had chased her 2,000 miles, had threatened everything she was trying to build, had turned her wedding into a strategic defense. Enough. A shadow appeared at her window. Lila aimed, fired. The shadow fell back with a curse. Her ears rang from the shot, but her hands didn't shake. "Good shot," Ethan called from the main room. His rifle cracked twice more. The assault lasted maybe 10 minutes. It felt like hours. Lila fired 3 more times. Didn't know if she hit anyone, but she kept them back from her window. Ethan's rifle was a constant percussion from the front of the house, methodical and precise. Then, suddenly, it stopped. Silence rushed in, broken only by Lila's ragged breathing and the ringing in her ears. "Ethan? Here. You hit?" "No, you?" "I'm fine." His voice was calm, steady. "Stay down. They might try again." But they didn't. After several long minutes, Lila heard hoofbeats retreating. The attackers were leaving. Ethan appeared in her doorway again. "You okay?" "I think so." Lila stood on shaking legs. Did I? You did good. Kept them off your side of the house." He checked her over with quick efficiency. "You're bleeding." She looked down. Her arm had a long gash, glass from the window probably. She hadn't even felt it. "It's not deep," Ethan said. "Come on, let's get you cleaned up." In the kitchen, now littered with broken glass and bullet holes, Ethan cleaned and bandaged her arm with practiced movements. His hands were gentle despite their roughness. "Where'd you learn to do this?" Lila asked. "Ranch work. You get hurt a lot. You learn basic doctoring, or you don't last long." He tied off the bandage. "That'll hold until we can get you to a real doctor." "I don't need a doctor. It's just a scratch." "It's more than a scratch. But it'll keep." He sat back. "They'll be back?" "I know. This is going to get worse before it gets better." "I know that too." Ethan studied her. "You're not what I expected when you stepped off that stagecoach." "What did you expect?" "Someone softer. Someone who'd break under this kind of pressure." He paused. "You haven't broken." "Not yet." "Not ever." His voice was certain. "I've seen people break." "You're not built that way." Lila wanted to believe him. "How can you tell?" "Because broken people quit. You keep showing up." They spent the rest of the night repairing what they could, boarding up windows, sweeping glass, assessing damage. By dawn, the house looked like what it was, a battlefield. "We need help," Lila said, staring at the bullet holes in the wall. "I know." "Who can we ask?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Town might help, if we ask right." "You think they'll care about helping me?" "I think they'll care about hired guns attacking one of their own. Ranch families stick together out here. Has to be that way, or none of us survive." He looked at her. "You're a ranch wife now. That means something." So they rode into Bitter Springs that morning, the wagon loaded with evidence of the attack, broken glass, spent bullets, splintered wood. Ethan drove straight to the sheriff's office. The sheriff was a grizzled man named Tom Brennan, who looked like he'd been carved from the same harsh landscape that surrounded them. He listened to their story with a face that gave away nothing, Then examine the evidence Ethan laid out. Dawson and his men, you say? Can't prove it was him specifically, Ethan admitted, but he's the only one who's been making threats. Threats aren't attacks. No, but 6 armed men shooting up a homestead unprovoked. That's something you can act on. Brennan sighed. Ethan, you know I got limited resources here. Can't go after every claim of trouble without proof. I'm giving you proof. Bullets, damage, witnesses. You're giving me evidence of an attack. But unless you can identify the attackers for certain, what am I supposed to do? Round up every drifter in the territory? Lila stepped forward. Sheriff, those men came to our home in the middle of the night. They tried to kill us. If Ethan and I weren't armed, we'd be dead right now. Brennan's expression softened slightly. I understand that, Mrs. Cole, and I'm sorry you went through it. But the law requires the law. Lila's voice rose. The law didn't protect my father when powerful men wanted him gone. The law didn't stop them from chasing me 2,000 miles. And now the law won't help us when we're being hunted on our own land? Mrs. Cole, no. She was shaking, but from anger now, not fear. You want proof? Fine. Watch our ranch. When they come back, and they will come back, you'll have your proof. Brennan looked at Ethan. She always this fierce? Lately, yeah. Well. Brennan tapped the spent bullets on his desk. I can't commit men to watching your place. Don't have the manpower. But I can make it known that attacks on homesteaders won't be tolerated. Word spreads fast in a small town. Might make whoever's behind this think twice. That's it? Lila couldn't keep the frustration from her voice. Words? Words matter out here, Mrs. Cole. Reputation matters. I start questioning people, making it clear I'm watching. That carries weight. He looked at Ethan. Meantime, you keep defending your property. You're within your rights. It wasn't enough. Lila knew it wasn't enough. But it was all they were going to get. They left the sheriff's office and walked down the main street. People stared at Lila's bandaged arm, at Ethan's grim expression. Word would spread. It always did. Mrs. Cole? They turned. Caroline Winters approached, her usual smug expression replaced with something that might have been concern. I heard about the attack, she said. Are you all right? I'm fine. I wanted to say... Caroline hesitated, like the words were difficult. What happened to you wasn't right. Whatever your past, nobody deserves that. Lila blinked, surprised. Thank you. My father's organizing a meeting. Ranch families, homesteaders. People are worried. If hired guns are attacking one property, they could attack others. Caroline's eyes flicked to Ethan. He wants to talk about organizing. Protection. When? Ethan asked. Tonight, at the church, 7 o'clock. After Caroline left, Lila said, You think it's genuine? The meeting? Yeah. Frontier folk don't like outside threats. Makes everyone nervous. Ethan guided her toward the general store. The concern from Caroline? Maybe. Or maybe she's just scared. Of what? Of being wrong about you. The meeting that night was packed. Every rancher and homesteader within 20 miles showed up, cramming into the small church until the air was thick with body heat and tension. Lila sat beside Ethan, acutely aware of every eye that tracked her movement. Mr. Winters, Caroline's father, stood at the front. He was a broad man with silver hair and the kind of authority that came from money and position. Most of you know why we're here, he began. The Cole Ranch was attacked 3 nights ago, 6 or more armed men. Now, I don't know what prompted it, and frankly, that's not the point. A murmur ran through the crowd. The point is this. We've got organized violence coming into our territory. Today it's the Coles. Tomorrow it could be any of us. We need to decide how we're going to respond. A rancher Lila didn't know stood up. What about the sheriff? Sheriff Brennan's doing what he can with limited resources, Winter said. But the reality is, we're spread too thin out here for law enforcement to protect everyone. We need to protect ourselves. You talking about forming a militia? Someone called out. I'm talking about organizing, communication. If one ranch is attacked, others respond. We watch each other's backs. And who decides what counts as an attack worth responding to? The question came from the back. A woman's voice, sharp and skeptical. What if this is just Ethan Cole's personal trouble? Why should we risk our families for his problems? Ethan stood. Fair question. And the answer is because today it's my problem, but tomorrow it's yours. These men aren't here because of some personal grudge. They're here because they think they can operate with impunity. You let them get away with it once, they'll keep coming. But what are they after? The woman pressed. What did you do to bring this trouble? All eyes turned to Lila. She felt the weight of their judgment, their suspicion. This was the moment she could lie, could deflect, or she could trust these people with the truth. She stood. My father worked as a bookkeeper in Philadelphia. He discovered evidence of corruption, bribes, payoffs, illegal dealings by powerful men. When he tried to report it, those men had him killed. Her voice didn't shake. They think I have his documents, think I can expose them. That's why they're here. Not because I did anything wrong, but because I know too much. Silence. Then Mr. Winters said, Do you have these documents? No, I've never seen them. Don't know if they even exist, but these men won't believe that. So you brought your trouble here, the skeptical woman said. Led them right to us. Yes, Lila met her eyes. I did, because I was desperate and scared, and I thought distance would keep me safe. I was wrong, and I'm sorry for that, but I'm not sorry for fighting back, and I won't apologize for asking you to do what's right. What's right? The woman's laugh was bitter. What's right is you leaving, going back to wherever you came from and taking your problems with you. Martha, Ethan's voice cut through the tension. If we start deciding who deserves protection based on whether their trouble is righteous enough, we've already lost. Today it's Lila they want. Tomorrow it might be your daughter because she turned down the wrong man, or your son because he witnessed something he shouldn't have. You want to live in a place where people only help if your story's clean enough? Martha's face reddened, but she didn't respond. Mr. Winters raised his hand. All in favor of organizing a mutual defense network, signaling system, response protocols, the works, say aye. The response wasn't unanimous, but it was strong enough. Most of the room agreed. Then it's settled. We'll work out the details over the next week. In the meantime, everyone keep eyes open for strangers, unusual activity, and the Coles. He looked at Ethan and Lila. You see trouble coming, you signal. We'll come running. After the meeting, people clustered in small groups, talking in low voices. Some avoided Lila entirely. Others, a surprising number, approached to offer quiet words of support. An older woman named Beth pressed Lila's hand. Don't listen to Martha. She's scared. We all are. But fear's no excuse for turning on each other. A young rancher named Tom clapped Ethan on the shoulder. Need extra hands for repairs. Let me know. I owe you for that time you helped with my barn. Slowly, grudgingly, the community was circling around them. It wasn't acceptance. Not entirely, but it was a start. On the ride home, Lila was quiet, processing everything that had happened. You did good tonight, Ethan said. Telling the truth. That took guts. I didn't have a choice. They deserved to know what they were getting into. You always have a choice. You chose honesty. A lot of people wouldn't have. Lila looked at him in the darkness. Do you think it'll work? This mutual defense thing? If we're lucky. If we're smart. If those men are dumb enough to come at us straight instead of sideways. He paused. Not great odds, but better than we had this morning. That night, back at the ranch, they worked together to finish the repairs. Hammering boards over windows, reinforcing doors. The house was starting to feel less like a home and more like a bunker. I'm sorry, Lila said at one point, holding a board while Ethan nailed it in place. For what? For bringing this to your door. For making your life harder. Ethan set down the hammer. You know what the hardest thing about Sarah dying was? Not the grief, not the loneliness. It was the feeling that her life didn't matter, that she suffered and died and the world just kept spinning like she'd never existed. He looked at Lila. You matter, Lila. What happened to your father matters. Those men thinking they can hunt you down and take what they want, that matters. And fighting back, making them pay a price for their cruelty, that's not making my life harder. That's giving it meaning again. Lila's eyes burned. Ethan, I'm not saying this for gratitude. I'm saying it so you stop apologizing for being in trouble you didn't cause. His voice was firm. We're partners now. Your fight's my fight. That's what marriage means out here. Even a marriage that started as an arrangement? Especially then, Because we chose this knowing it wouldn't be easy. That counts for something. Lila nodded, not trusting her voice. They finished the repairs in silence, but it was a different kind of silence than before. Comfortable. United. When they were done, Ethan said, "I'm going to stay in the house tonight, on the couch, just in case." "You don't have to." "I know, but I'm going to." Lila didn't argue. Truth was, she felt safer knowing he was close. That night, lying in bed, she heard him moving around in the main room, settling in, standing guard. And for the first time since this all started, she felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. Not that things would be easy, not that the danger would disappear, but hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd found something worth fighting for. A place that could be home. A partner who wouldn't run when things got hard. A chance to stop being the girl who was always running. And if these men wanted to take that from her, they were going to have to go through her first. The reprieve lasted exactly 5 days. 5 days of tense normalcy where Lila and Ethan worked the ranch with rifles always within reach. 5 days of jumping at shadows and sleeping in shifts. 5 days of waiting for the next move in a game neither of them fully understood. Then the letter came. The writer who delivered it wasn't one of Dawson's men. He was a courier from Cheyenne, official-looking with a leather satchel and disinterested eyes. He handed Ethan an envelope sealed with red wax and left without a word. Ethan broke the seal at the kitchen table while Lila watched over his shoulder. The letterhead was fancy, embossed gold letters spelling out names of a law firm she didn't recognize. But the message was clear enough. "They're suing me," Lila said, her voice hollow, "for my father's debts." "Not just suing, they're claiming you inherited assets along with the debts. Property, securities, cash holdings." Ethan's finger traced down the page. "Says here your father had substantial hidden wealth that legally passes to you as sole heir." "That's insane. My father died broke. We lost the house. Everything. They don't care if it's true. They care if they can make it stick in court." Ethan set the letter down. "This is smarter than sending hired guns. Legal pressure. If they can get a judgment against you, they can seize property, including this ranch, since you're my wife now." Lila's hands clenched into fists. "They can't do that." "They can try. And out here, with the right judge, the right connections." He didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. "So what do we do?" "We need a lawyer. A good one." Ethan stood, paced to the window. "Problem is, good lawyers cost money I don't have. And the kind who'd go up against a firm like this? That's serious money. Then we're finished." "No." Ethan turned back to her. "We're not finished. We're just outgunned. Different thing." "How is that different?" "Because outgunned, you can still win. Just have to be smarter." He grabbed his hat. "I'm going to town. Talk to some people. You stay here. Keep the doors locked. Rifle loaded." "Ethan, I'll be back before dark." His eyes met hers. "Trust me." She did. That was the strange part. Somewhere in the past 3 weeks, trust had crept in without her noticing. This man who'd married her sight unseen, who'd stood between her and danger without hesitation, she trusted him in ways she'd never trusted anyone. "Be careful," she said. "Always am." After he left, Lila tried to work. Tried to focus on mending, on cooking, on the 100 small tasks that kept a ranch running. But her mind kept circling back to that letter, to the names of men in Philadelphia who'd never met her but wanted to destroy her anyway. She was in the garden, yanking weeds with more force than necessary, when she heard a wagon approaching. Her hand went to the revolver at her hip. She wore it now, always, but relaxed when she recognized Beth, the older woman from the community meeting. "Mrs. Cole!" Beth climbed down from her wagon with surprising agility for her age. "Hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all." Lila wiped dirt from her hands. "Ethan's in town, but I came to see you, actually." Beth reached into her wagon and pulled out a covered basket. "Brought some preserves, and I wanted to talk." They sat on the porch, and Beth poured coffee from a thermos she'd brought. The woman had come prepared. "I hear you got legal trouble now," Beth said without preamble. "On top of the shooting trouble." Word traveled fast. "Yes, ma'am." "Stop with the ma'am. Makes me feel ancient." Beth sipped her coffee. "I also hear you're worried about affording a lawyer." Lila's defenses went up. "I can handle it." "Can you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're a new bride with no money, no connections, and enemies with both. That's not handling it. That's drowning. The bluntness should have stung. Instead, it was almost refreshing. What would you suggest? Lila asked. I'd suggest you stop pretending you don't need help. Pride's useful for a lot of things, but it won't win you a court case. Beth set down her cup. My late husband was a lawyer before he came west, left me his law books, his notes. I've picked up enough to know my way around legal language. I can't represent you in court, but I can help you understand what you're facing, help you prepare. Why would you do that? Because 30 years ago, I was you. Different circumstances, same desperate situation. Someone helped me when they didn't have to. I'm passing it forward. Beth's eyes were sharp, assessing. Question is, are you willing to fight dirty? What do you mean? I mean, these men are using the law as a weapon. You want to beat them, you need to use it right back. Find the flaws in their case, exploit every loophole, make them prove every single claim. Beth leaned forward. Legal battles aren't about truth. They're about who can argue better. You ready for that? Lila thought about her father, dead in his study with terror in his eyes. About running 2,000 miles only to be dragged back into the same fight. About Ethan, risking everything for a woman he'd known less than a month. I'm ready, she said. Beth smiled. Good. Then let's get to work. They spent the afternoon going through the letter line by line. Beth asked questions Lila couldn't answer. Where had her father worked? Who were his clients? What records existed? With each question, the magnitude of what she was facing became clearer. They're fishing, Beth said finally. Half these claims are speculation. They're hoping you'll panic and settle rather than fight. But what if they're not fishing? What if my father really did hide money somewhere? Then they need to prove it. Burden of proof is on them. Beth tapped the letter. This here, claiming you inherited securities. That requires documentation, transfer records, your father's will. They produce those documents, then you worry. Until then, they're bluffing. And if they're not bluffing, then you bluff harder. Ethan returned just before sunset, and with him came an unexpected guest. Mr. Winters climbed down from Ethan's wagon, his expression grave. Mr. Winters, Lila said, surprised. I didn't. Ethan told me about the legal situation. May we come in? Inside, around the kitchen table, Winters laid out papers of his own. I made some inquiries. This law firm, Blackwell and Associates, they're known in financial circles, ruthless, effective, and they don't take cases they can't win. That's not encouraging, Lila said. It's realistic, which is what you need right now. Winters looked at her directly. Who were your father's clients, specifically? Lila rattled off the names she remembered. Factory owners, shipping magnates, political figures. Winters' expression grew darker with each name. I know 3 of these men personally, business dealings. He paused. If your father had evidence of their corruption, they'd pay any price to keep it buried. But I don't have evidence, I've told them that. Doesn't matter if you have it. Matters if they think you might. Winters drummed his fingers on the table. Here's what I'm thinking. You say your father died before he could expose them, but what if he didn't? What if he left a contingency? I don't understand, Lila said. A dead man's switch. Evidence set to release automatically if something happened to him. Winters leaned back. It's a common enough tactic. Could explain why they're so persistent. They're not just worried about what you know. They're worried about what your father set in motion. Ethan frowned. You're saying there might actually be documents out there? I'm saying it's possible. And if it is, you need to find them before they do. How? Lila's frustration bubbled over. I searched everything. His office, his house, his personal effects. There was nothing. You searched obvious places. Your father was a bookkeeper. He understood hiding assets. He'd have been creative. Winters pulled out a notebook. Think. Did he have any unusual habits? Places he went regularly? People he trusted? Lila closed her eyes, forcing herself back into memories she'd tried to bury. Her father in his study, always working late. His Sunday walks that he insisted on taking alone. The strange afternoon he'd asked her to witness his signature on documents she wasn't allowed to read. The church, she said suddenly. St. Michael's. He went every Sunday, but he wasn't religious. He'd spend hours there, said it helped him think. Churches keep records, Beth said. Baptisms, marriages, deaths. Easy place to hide papers in plain sight. But that's in Philadelphia, Lila said. 2,000 miles away. Then someone needs to go to Philadelphia, Winters said simply. The room fell silent. Absolutely not, Ethan said. That's exactly what they want. Lila shows up in Philadelphia, they'll grab her. Not Lila, Winters said. You. Me? You're her husband, legally entitled to investigate her father's estate, and you're unknown to them. They won't be watching for you the way they watch for her. Winters looked at Lila. You'd need to give him power of attorney, authority to act on your behalf. Lila's mind raced. Ethan leaving meant staying here alone, vulnerable, but it also meant a chance, maybe their only chance, to find the truth. How long would you be gone? She asked. Week, maybe 2. Depends on what I find. Ethan didn't look happy about it. But Winters is right. If there's evidence, we need it, and I can move faster alone. You can't leave her unprotected, Beth said, not with those men circling. She won't be unprotected. Ethan looked at Lila. You can shoot now. Know the land. And the community agreed to watch out for each other. Tom and his brother can check the property daily. Beth can stay here at night if you're willing. Of course I'm willing, Beth said. Still don't like it, Ethan muttered. Leaving you feels wrong. What feels wrong and what's necessary aren't always the same thing. Lila surprised herself with the steadiness in her voice. If there's evidence that can end this, we need it. I'll manage here. You're sure? She wasn't, but she nodded anyway. The next 2 days were a blur of preparation. Ethan taught Lila the ranch's routines she didn't know yet, made lists of neighbors to contact if trouble came, checked and rechecked the rifles. Winters arranged travel documents and letters of introduction. Beth moved into the house with a trunk of belongings and a shotgun she handled with disturbing competence. On the morning Ethan was set to leave, Lila woke before dawn and found him in the barn, saddling his horse for the ride to the train station. You don't have to do this, she said. He turned. Yeah, I do. Why? I mean, really, why? This isn't your fight. These aren't your demons. Ethan was quiet for a moment, his hand still on the saddle. When Sarah died, I made her a promise. Told her I'd keep going, keep the ranch alive, honor her memory by not giving up. He looked at Lila. But surviving isn't the same as living. Last few years, I've just been going through motions. Then you showed up, and suddenly I had a reason to fight again, to care about something beyond just getting through another day. I'm not Sarah. No, you're not. You're stubborn and fierce, and you don't quit even when quitting would be easier. A slight smile touched his mouth. You're exactly what I needed. So yes, this is my fight. Because you're my wife. Because I choose it to be. Lila's throat tightened. What if something happens to you in Philadelphia? Then you keep fighting. You don't stop. You don't give these bastards an inch. He gripped her shoulders. Promise me. Whatever happens, you don't quit. I promise. Good. He released her, returned to checking his gear. Beth will keep you safe. Tom will watch the property, and I'll be back as soon as I can. Ethan. She waited until he looked at her. Come back. Planning on it. They stood there in the dim barn, the space between them charged with things neither knew how to say. Then Ethan stepped forward and kissed her. Not on the forehead this time. On the mouth. Brief, gentle, but real. When he pulled back, his eyes were serious. In case I don't get to say it later, marrying you was the best decision I've made in a long time. Then he was on his horse and riding out, and Lila stood watching until he disappeared over the ridge. Beth found her still standing there 20 minutes later. He'll be fine, the older woman said. Ethan's tougher than he looks. I know, Lila stopped, unsure how to finish. You care about him. That's allowed, you know. Marriage of convenience can turn into the real thing. We barely know each other. You know him where it counts, how he acts under pressure, whether he runs or stands. That's more than most couples know after years together. Beth headed toward the house. Come on, work to do. Sitting around worrying won't help anything. She was right. So Lila threw herself into the work, feeding cattle, mending fences, all the tasks that kept the ranch functioning. Beth worked alongside her with the easy competence of someone who'd done this before. By evening, Lila was exhausted enough that sleep might actually come. It didn't. She lay awake listening to Beth's soft snoring from the main room and wondered what Ethan was doing. if he was on the train yet, if the men in Philadelphia would recognize him, if a sound outside brought her bolt upright, not horses, something else. Scraping, like metal on metal. Lila grabbed her revolver and crept to the window. Moonlight washed the yard in silver. At first she saw nothing, then movement near the barn, a shadow detaching from other shadows. One person. Alone. Not an attack then. Something else. Lila moved silently through the house, past sleeping Beth, out the back door. She circled around, keeping to cover, until she had a clear view of the barn. The figure was inside now, moving around with a small lantern. Lila crept closer, raised her gun. "Don't move." The figure froze, then slowly turned, hands up. It was Caroline Winters. "Mrs. Cole." Caroline's voice shook. "Please, I need to talk to you." "In my barn? At midnight? I couldn't be seen coming here during the day. Father can't know." Caroline set down the lantern. "Please, I'm not here to cause trouble." Lila kept the gun steady. "Start talking. My father, Mr. Winters, he's not what he seems." Caroline's words came fast, desperate. "The help he's offering isn't charity. He has his own reasons." "What reasons?" "He knew your father, years ago, before you were born. They were business partners briefly. Something went wrong, ended badly. Father never talks about it, but I found letters." Caroline stepped forward, and Lila raised the gun higher. "Your father had evidence against my father, too. That's why he's helping you. He wants to make sure those documents never surface." Lila's world tilted. "You're lying." "I wish I was. But think about it. Why would a banker in Wyoming care about legal troubles in Philadelphia? Why would he personally arrange Ethan's travel, offer resources?" Caroline's eyes were desperate. "He's not helping you. He's protecting himself." "If that's true, why are you telling me?" "Because I'm tired of lies. Tired of watching my father manipulate people." Caroline's voice cracked. "And because Ethan doesn't know what he's walking into. If he goes to Philadelphia asking questions about your father, my father's associates will know. They'll be waiting." The implication hit Lila like a fist. "He's walking into a trap." "Yes. Why should I believe you?" "You shouldn't. But you should ask yourself why my father was so eager to send Ethan away. Why he was so specific about where to search." Caroline pulled a folded paper from her coat. "I copied this from Father's desk. It's a telegram he received yesterday." Lila took the paper, angled it toward the moonlight. The message was brief, coded, but the signature at the bottom was clear enough. Blackwell and Associates, the law firm suing her. "They're coordinating," Lila said slowly. "Your father and my father's enemies. I think your father had evidence that could destroy multiple men, including mine. They've all been working together to find it, and now they've sent Ethan straight into their hands." Lila's grip tightened on the gun. "Get out. Mrs. Cole, get out of my barn before I shoot you for trespassing." Caroline fled. Lila stood in the darkness, heart hammering, mind racing through implications. If Caroline was telling the truth, Ethan was in danger. Real, immediate danger. But if she was lying, if this was some elaborate manipulation to get Lila to act rashly, then panicking would play right into their hands. She needed proof. Real proof. Lila went back to the house, to the box of documents Ethan had left for her. Marriage certificate, property deed, financial records. She went through them with new eyes, looking for connections she'd missed. There, in the property transfer documents from when Ethan first bought the ranch. The previous owner had sold to him for a fraction of the property's value, desperate to leave. And the loan that funded the purchase? Co-signed by Winters. Winters had a financial stake in this ranch, which meant if the lawsuit succeeded, if the property was seized, he'd lose his investment. Unless he recovered the documents first and used them as leverage. Lila sat back, pieces clicking into place. Winters wasn't helping them out of kindness. He was playing both sides, helping Lila just enough to maintain her trust while coordinating with Blackwell's firm to control the outcome. Send Ethan to Philadelphia, where he could be monitored, controlled, possibly eliminated. Keep Lila here, isolated, waiting. And she'd let Ethan walk right into it. Beth appeared in the doorway, shotgun in hand. "Heard voices. What's going on?" "We have a problem," Lila explained quickly. Caroline's visit, the telegram, her suspicions about Winters. Beth's face went hard. That scheming son of a... She cut herself off. What do we do? We warn Ethan. He's probably on the train by now, but maybe we can get word to him at the next station. How? We'd never beat the train. Telegraph. There's an office in Bitter Springs. Office that Winters controls, Beth said. You think he'd let a warning through? She was right. Any message they sent would go through people loyal to Winters, people who'd report back. Then we go ourselves, Lila said. To Philadelphia? To wherever Ethan is before he walks into their trap. Beth stared at her. You're talking about leaving the ranch undefended, traveling thousands of miles with no money, no protection. They'd grab you the second you showed your face. Probably. Lila, I can't just sit here while Ethan gets hurt because of me. I won't. Lila stood, decision made. You can stay, watch the ranch. I'll go alone if I have to. Like hell you will. Beth set down her shotgun. Give me 10 minutes to pack. They worked fast, gathering supplies, money, anything that might be useful. Lila wrote a quick note for Tom, asking him to watch the property. Then she and Beth slipped out into the pre-dawn darkness. They took the wagon, drove it hard toward the train station 2 towns over. If they were lucky, they'd catch the eastbound train before Ethan's got too far ahead. If they were very lucky, they'd reach him before he reached Philadelphia. And if they weren't lucky... Lila refused to think about that. The ride was brutal. They pushed the horses to the edge of endurance, stopping only when absolutely necessary. Beth didn't complain, didn't question. She just drove with grim determination while Lila kept watch for pursuers. They reached the station just as the eastbound train was pulling in. Lila jumped down from the wagon before it fully stopped. 2 tickets to Cheyenne, she told the clerk, pulling out precious cash. Train's full up. Next one's tomorrow. We'll stand. We need to be on this train. The clerk looked ready to argue, then saw something in Lila's expression that made him reconsider. All right, but it's your feet that'll hurt. They boarded just as the whistle blew. The car was packed, every seat taken, but Lila didn't care. They wedged themselves into a space near the door and held on as the train lurched forward. What's the plan when we reach Cheyenne? Beth asked. Find Ethan, warn him, figure out the rest from there. That's not much of a plan. It's what we've got. The train rattled east, eating distance. Lila watched Wyoming blur past, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life, running toward danger instead of away from it, leaving the one safe place she'd found. But Ethan had stood for her when he didn't have to, had married her, protected her, risked everything. The least she could do was try to return the favor, even if it killed her. The train stopped in Cheyenne long enough to take on water and passengers. Lila scanned the platform frantically, looking for Ethan. She'd memorized what he was wearing, dark coat, brown hat, but in the crowd of travelers, everyone looked the same. There, Beth pointed. Ethan stood near the far end of the platform, talking to a man in an expensive suit. The conversation looked casual, friendly even, but something about the man's posture made Lila's instincts scream. She pushed through the crowd. Ethan! He turned, shock flashing across his face. Lila, what are you... Don't get on that train. She grabbed his arm. It's a trap. Winters is working with them. The man in the suit smiled. Mrs. Cole, I presume. We've been expecting you. 3 more men emerged from the crowd, surrounding them. Not threatening, not yet. Just there, blocking escape routes. Ethan Cole, the suited man said. I'm Agent Morrison, Federal Marshal. I have questions about your wife's activities. What activities? Ethan's voice was ice. Fraud, theft of government documents, conspiracy. Morrison pulled out papers. There's a warrant for her arrest. She's to return to Philadelphia to face charges. Let me see that warrant. Morrison handed it over. Ethan read it, his jaw tightening with every line. When he finished, he looked at Lila. It's fake, she said. Or coerced. My father worked with federal officials. These are probably the same ones he tried to expose. Mrs. Cole, making accusations against federal officers is serious, Morrison said. I suggest you come quietly. And I suggest you prove your credentials before you take anyone anywhere, Beth snapped. Morrison's smile didn't waver. Of course. He reached for his badge. Ethan's fist caught him in the jaw before the movement finished. Morrison went down hard, The other men lunged forward, but Ethan was already moving, pulling Lila behind him. Run! They ran, through the crowd away from the platform. Beth grabbed Lila's other arm, and together they crashed through the station. Behind them, whistles blew. Men shouted. Outside, Ethan dragged them toward a waiting wagon. Get in! Whose wagon? Doesn't matter. Get in. They piled in. Ethan grabbed the reins and whipped the horses into motion just as Morrison and his men burst from the station. Gunfire cracked. Wood splintered near Lila's head. Get down! Ethan shouted. They careened through Cheyenne's streets, the wagon swaying dangerously. Behind them, horses pounded in pursuit. Head for the river, Beth yelled. There's a crossing, narrow, they can't follow easy. Ethan yanked the reins, turning them north. The wagon skidded, nearly tipped. Lila held on, her heart somewhere in her throat. The river appeared, wide, fast, angry with spring runoff. The crossing was exactly what Beth described, a narrow ford with rocks breaking the surface. This is insane, Ethan muttered, then drove straight into it. Water exploded around them. The horses screamed, fought the current. The wagon lurched, wheels finding purchase on unseen rocks, slipping, finding it again. Lila tasted river water, cold and bitter. And then they were across, scrambling up the far bank. Behind them, their pursuers pulled up short. The crossing was too dangerous to risk in pursuit. Ethan didn't slow down until they'd put miles between them and Cheyenne. Finally, he pulled the horses to a stop in a grove of trees and turned to Lila. Now, he said, breathing hard. Someone want to explain what the hell just happened? Lila told him everything. Caroline's midnight visit, the telegram, Winter's connection to her father. Ethan listened without interrupting, his face growing harder with each detail. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, So we've been played from the start. Looks that way. Winters sent me straight to them. Probably had Morrison waiting. Ethan's hands tightened on the reins, and I walked right into it like a damn fool. You didn't know, Beth said. None of us did. Should have. Should have questioned why a banker would be so helpful. He looked at Lila. You left the ranch unprotected to warn me. Couldn't let you face it alone. And now we're all exposed. No safe place to go back to. Federal marshals hunting us, real or fake, and no way to prove any of this. Ethan's laugh was bitter. We're in worse shape than when we started. Maybe not. Beth reached into her bag and pulled out a small metal box. Before we left, I grabbed something from your house, documents Lila's father sent before he died. Letters he wrote to her that she never opened. Lila stared. What letters? The ones that came after he died. You threw them in a drawer, said you couldn't bear to read them. Beth opened the box. But I read them while you were out working. Your father knew he was in danger. He left you instructions. Inside were 3 letters, the paper yellowed, the handwriting shaky. Lila's father's hand. She recognized it from years of seeing him work at his desk. The first letter was dated 2 weeks before his death. Lila, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. Know that I love you, and everything I did was to protect you from the men whose corruption I documented. I've hidden evidence in a place only you would think to look. Remember the stories I told you about your mother? The truth is there. Find it, and you'll have what you need to destroy them. I'm sorry I couldn't be braver while alive. Perhaps I can be useful in death. Your loving father. Stories about my mother, Lila said slowly. He never talked about her. She died when I was born. He must have said something, Beth pressed. Think. Lila tried. Her childhood was a blur of her father working, always working, barely present even when physically there. But there had been one story, one he told her every year on her birthday. The lighthouse, she said. He told me my mother loved a lighthouse on the coast, Cape May, I think. Said she'd watch the light turn and feel safe. She looked up. That's where it is. The evidence. It has to be. Cape May's in New Jersey, Ethan said. That's 1,200 miles from here. Lila's hands shook as she held the letter. And probably crawling with people looking for us. Definitely crawling with them, Beth said grimly. If Morrison was waiting in Cheyenne, they've got people at every major station between here and the East Coast. Then we don't use stations. Ethan studied the horizon. We go overland, slower, harder, but invisible. You're talking about weeks of travel, Beth said, through territory none of us know. with limited supplies and people hunting us. You have a better idea? She didn't. None of them did. They made camp that night in a ravine that offered cover from the road. No fire. Too risky. They ate cold jerky and stale bread, passing a canteen between them. I shouldn't have dragged you into this, Lila said to Beth. You could be safe at the ranch. Safe and ignorant. I prefer dangerous and informed. Beth wrapped her shawl tighter. Besides, somebody needs to keep you two from getting killed. Why are you really helping us? Ethan asked. The truth, this time. Beth was quiet long enough that Lila thought she wouldn't answer. Then, I told you my husband was a lawyer. What I didn't say was why he came west. He tried to prosecute powerful men for fraud. They destroyed his reputation, got him disbarred, threatened our family. So we ran. Came out here to disappear. She stared at the darkness. He died 5 years later, never having practiced law again. Died believing he'd failed. I'm sorry, Lila said. Don't be sorry. Be successful. Win the fight he couldn't. Beth's voice was steel. That's why I'm here. Because maybe if you beat these bastards, it'll mean something that he tried. They traveled east for 3 days, keeping to back roads and wilderness. Ethan proved surprisingly skilled at reading terrain, finding routes that kept them hidden. Beth knew how to make supplies stretch, how to find edible plants, how to move through country like they belonged there. And Lila? She learned to push past exhaustion, past fear, past the voice in her head that said this was impossible. She learned that she was stronger than she'd thought, that soft didn't mean weak, that the body everyone dismissed could walk 20 miles a day, could go without sleep, could survive on next to nothing. On the 4th day, they reached a small town called Millbrook, little more than a crossroads with a general store and a saloon. They needed supplies and, more importantly, information. I'll go, Ethan said. You two stay with the wagon. They're looking for you too, Lila said. It's not safe. Less safe than you showing your face? He had a point. I'll be quick. Stay out of sight. He was gone 20 minutes. When he returned, his expression was grim. What happened? Beth asked. Saw a wanted poster for Lila. Ethan pulled it from his coat. $500 reward. Claims she's wanted for theft of federal documents and conspiracy. Lila stared at her own face, rendered in rough sketch. The description underneath was damning, dangerous, armed, possibly traveling with accomplices. $500, she said numbly. That's more than most people make in a year. That's the point. They want every bounty hunter and desperate farmer between here and the coast looking for you. Ethan crumpled the poster. We need to move faster. Get to Cape May before word spreads too far. How? Beth asked. We're already pushing as hard as we can. Train, Ethan said. Not passenger. Freight. You want us to hop a freight train? Lila couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. It's that or spend 2 more weeks on roads where anyone might recognize you. He looked at her seriously. It's dangerous. If we get caught, they'll arrest us for vagrancy on top of everything else. But it's faster. Lila thought about her father's letter, about the evidence waiting in Cape May, about how every day they delayed was another day for their enemies to prepare. When's the next freight train? She asked. They sold the wagon, at a loss, but they needed the cash, and waited at a rail yard 20 miles away. The freight train came through just after midnight, a long snake of cars heading east. There, Ethan pointed. Empty boxcar, doors open. When it slows for the crossing, we run. They ran. Beth went first, surprisingly agile for her age, grabbing the handle and hauling herself up. Ethan lifted Lila bodily, practically threw her into the car. She landed hard, rolled, came up gasping. Ethan swung up behind her as the train picked up speed. Inside the boxcar was dark, smelling of old hay and rust, but it was shelter, and it was moving them east. Everyone all right? Ethan asked. Peachy, Beth said dryly. They settled in, arranging their meager supplies. The train swayed and rattled, a constant rhythm that should have been soothing but kept Lila on edge. Every stop, every slowdown, she tensed, waiting for the door to slide open and reveal police, marshals, bounty hunters. But hours passed, and they remained undiscovered. Tell me about your mother, Beth said at one point, breaking the silence. Your real mother, not the story. I don't remember her. My father said she died in childbirth. Lila leaned against the boxcar wall. He said she was beautiful, kind, everything good in the world. I think he blamed me for losing her. Did he say that? Didn't have to. I could see it in how he looked at me sometimes, like I was a reminder of what he'd lost. She paused. That's why the lighthouse story was strange. It was the only time he talked about her like she was real, not some perfect memory. He said she'd stand at the window of the lighthouse keeper's cottage and count the rotations. 11 seconds of light, 11 seconds of dark, over and over. 11 seconds, Ethan said slowly. That means something? It's a pattern. Lighthouses each have unique patterns, so ships can identify them. Beth leaned forward. What if the documents are in a pattern too? 11 pages, 11 files, something arranged in 11s. Or it's just a detail from a story, Lila said. I might be reading meaning into nothing. Or it's the clue your father left, a pattern only you would recognize. Beth's eyes were sharp. We'll know when we get there. The train carried them through Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois. They jumped off before major stations, hopped back on after, ate what they could buy in small towns, slept in shifts, stayed invisible. It was in Indiana that things went wrong. They'd stopped at a rail yard to let a passenger train pass. Ethan had gone to fill their water canteen at a pump. He'd been gone 5 minutes when men surrounded the boxcar. You in there? A harsh voice. Come out with your hands up. Lila and Beth exchanged looks. Through the crack in the door, Lila could see at least 6 men, too many to fight. What do we do? She whispered. Whatever keeps us alive long enough to run. Beth set down her shotgun, useless at these odds, and raised her hands. Don't do anything stupid. They climbed out of the boxcar into harsh afternoon sun. The men were railroad bulls, security hired to keep drifters and thieves off the trains. Rough, underpaid, and looking for reasons to exert authority. The lead bull, a thick man with a scar across his nose, grabbed Lila's arm. This her? Another man checked a paper, the wanted poster. Looks like. I'm not who you think I am, Lila said. Sure you're not. That's what they all say. Scarface grinned, showing missing teeth. $500 says otherwise. Henderson, get the sheriff. Rest of you, watch the old woman. This one's coming with me. He dragged Lila toward a small office building. She stumbled, tried to resist, but his grip was iron. Ethan, Beth called. Not loud, just enough to carry. A warning. Lila hoped he heard, hoped he'd stay hidden because him getting captured too wouldn't help anyone. Inside the office, Scarface shoved her into a chair. Stay put. Try to run. I'll break your legs. $500 is $500, but I don't need you walking to collect. He turned to lock the door. Lila's eyes darted around the room, looking for options. One window, barred. One door, about to be locked. No weapons, except... There. A letter opener on the desk. Lila grabbed it as Scarface turned back. She didn't think, just moved. Drove the blade into his thigh, aiming for the soft flesh above the knee. He screamed, stumbled. Lila ran for the window. Barred, but the glass wasn't. She grabbed the chair and smashed it through. Alarm bells rang. Men shouted. Lila cleared the glass with her sleeve and dove through, landing badly on the other side. Pain shot through her shoulder, but she forced herself up and ran. Behind her, Scarface was yelling, She's out! Get her! Lila ran between boxcars, no clear destination, just away. Footsteps pounded behind her, a gunshot cracked, and wood splintered near her head. Then someone grabbed her, pulled her sideways into a gap between cars. Ethan. He clamped a hand over her mouth. Quiet. They pressed against the metal, barely breathing, as their pursuers ran past. When the footsteps faded, Ethan released her. You hurt? My shoulder, maybe dislocated, I don't know. Adrenaline was wearing off, and pain rushed in to replace it. Can you move it? She tried, agony but functional. Yes. Good. Beth's waiting at the east end of the yard. We need to move before they organize a real search. They crept through the yard, using the maze of cars and equipment for cover. Twice they had to freeze as railroad bulls passed nearby, searching. But Ethan knew how to move unseen, and Lila was learning. Beth waited where Ethan said, crouched behind a water tower. About time. Thought I'd have to stage a rescue. She staged her own, Ethan said, stabbed a man and jumped through a window. Good for you. Beth handed Lila a cloth. Your shoulder's bleeding through your shirt. We need to stop that. They made it out of the yard and into the town beyond. a grimy industrial place that seemed to exist solely to service the railroad. Beth led them to a boarding house, paid for a room with precious cash, and locked the door behind them. "Let me see that shoulder," she said. The cut was deep but clean. Beth cleaned it with whiskey that made Lila bite back screams, then bandaged it with strips torn from a spare shirt. "You were lucky," Beth said. "Few inches different, you'd have lost use of the arm." "Doesn't feel lucky." "Alive is lucky." Beth packed away the medical supplies. "But we can't keep doing this. Can't keep running into trouble and barely escaping. Eventually our luck runs out." "What choice do we have?" Ethan asked. "We stop reacting and start acting." Beth pulled out a map. "We're here in Gary, Indiana. Cape May is roughly 700 miles east, but between here and there is a lot of populated territory, a lot of places where that wanted poster has probably reached." "So we avoid populated areas," Lila said. "Then how do we travel? Walking 700 miles through wilderness will take months." Beth tapped the map. "We need a different approach, something they won't expect." "Like what?" "We split up." Beth looked at them both. "Ethan and I draw attention, make it look like we're heading north into Michigan. Meanwhile, Lila goes south, circles around, approaches Cape May from an unexpected direction." "Absolutely not," Ethan said immediately. "She's the one they want most. She goes alone, she's dead." "She goes with us, she's dead. At least alone she's a smaller target." Beth's voice was firm. "I know it's not ideal, but ideal isn't an option anymore." "There has to be another way," Ethan insisted. "Then tell me what it is." Beth crossed her arms. "Because from where I'm sitting, we're out of money, out of options, and running out of time. Every day we delay is another day for them to prepare, another day for bounty hunters to pick up our trail." Lila looked at the map, at the distance between Gary and Cape May. Beth was right. As much as she hated it, the older woman was right. "I'll go alone," she said quietly. "Lila." "Ethan, listen." She turned to him. "Beth's right. We're more visible together, and if they catch you because of me, if something happens to either of you, I couldn't live with that. And you think I could live with sending you into danger alone? You're not sending me anywhere. I'm choosing to go." She took his hand, squeezed it. "I can do this. I'm not the same person who stepped off that stagecoach in Bitter Springs. You taught me to shoot, to ride, to stand my ground. Let me use those lessons." Ethan's jaw worked. She could see him struggling, wanting to argue but finding no logical ground to stand on. "You take the revolver," he said finally, "and money, whatever we have left. You'll need, we'll manage. You're the one going into the worst danger." He pulled her close, pressed his forehead to hers. "You find that lighthouse, get the evidence, and you survive. Hear me?" "I hear you." "Promise me." "I promise." They held each other for a moment that felt too short. Then Beth cleared her throat. "We should move tonight. The longer we stay in one place, the more risk someone recognizes us." So they planned. Ethan and Beth would take a train north, make noise, be seen, draw the search away. Meanwhile, Lila would head east on back roads, staying invisible. They'd meet in Cape May, 1 week from now, at the lighthouse, if they all survived that long. Lila left at midnight, slipping out of the boarding house like a ghost. Beth had given her a change of clothes, plain, forgettable, and what little money they could spare. Ethan had checked her revolver 3 times, making sure it was loaded, functional, ready. Now she walked alone through dark streets, heading for the edge of town, heading for the long road east. She'd traveled maybe 5 miles when she heard horses behind her. Lila stepped off the road, into the shadows. 3 riders passed, moving fast. One of them had a wanted poster visible in his saddlebag. Bounty hunters. Lila waited until they disappeared over the next ridge, then continued walking. Her shoulder ached. Her feet were developing blisters. But she kept going because stopping meant thinking about how alone she was, how impossible this seemed. Dawn found her in farmland, endless fields of corn reaching toward a pale sky. She walked the edges, staying out of sight, eating the last of her bread. By the second day, her supplies were gone. She drank from streams, ate what she could forage, berries that might have been edible, plants Beth had taught her to recognize. It wasn't enough. Her stomach cramped with hunger, but she pushed on. On the 3rd day, she collapsed, just fell, her legs giving out. She lay in tall grass by the roadside, staring at clouds, wondering if this was how it ended. Not caught, not killed, just exhausted, starved, alone. Then a wagon stopped. "You all right, miss?" Lila forced her head up. An old farmer peered down at her, concern in his weathered face. She should run, should hide, but she didn't have the strength. "I'm fine," she managed. "Just resting." "You look half dead." He climbed down, offered a canteen. "When's the last time you ate?" "I don't remember." He studied her face, and Lila waited for recognition to dawn, for him to pull out a wanted poster, demand the reward. Instead, he said, "Can't have that. Come on, my wife makes a stew that'll put meat on your bones." "I can't." Wasn't a request. Up you get. He helped her into the wagon, and Lila was too weak to resist. She expected a trap, expected to arrive at his farm and find marshals waiting. But there were no marshals, just a small farmhouse where his wife, a round woman with kind eyes, took one look at Lila and started heating stew. "What's your name, dear?" she asked. Lila hesitated. "Mary." "Well, Mary, you look like you've been through hell and back. Eat first, talk later." The stew was the best thing Lila had ever tasted. She ate 3 bowls, feeling strength seep back into her limbs. "Where you headed?" the farmer asked. "East. New Jersey." "That's a long way. You running from something?" Lila met his eyes. "If I say yes, will you turn me in?" He exchanged a look with his wife. "Depends on what you're running from." "Powerful men who killed my father and want me silenced." The wife sucked in a breath. But the farmer just nodded slowly. "We figured it was something like that. You've got the look." "What look?" "Hunted." He refilled her bowl. "My daughter had that look once. She witnessed something she shouldn't have. Men came looking for her. We hid her, helped her get away. Never saw her again." His voice cracked on the last sentence. "I'm sorry," Lila said. "Don't be. She's alive somewhere. That's what matters." He looked at Lila. "You need help getting east, we'll help. Call it paying forward." "I can't ask." "You're not asking. I'm offering." He stood. "Rest here tonight. Tomorrow, I'll drive you to the next county. Friend of mine runs a mill there. He can get you further." "Why would you risk this?" "Because my daughter's alive, because someone else took the same risk." His eyes were fierce. "And because powerful men shouldn't get to destroy whoever they want without consequences." Lila stayed the night in their barn, sleeping on hay that felt like luxury after nights on hard ground. In the morning, the farmer drove her 20 miles to the mill he'd mentioned. The mill owner, a stern man named Dutch, listened to the farmer's explanation and nodded once. "I've got a delivery going to Pittsburgh day after tomorrow. You can ride with the cargo." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. It's a rough ride, and if we get stopped, I'll deny knowing you were there." Fair enough. This became the pattern. Farmers, mill workers, shopkeepers, ordinary people who took extraordinary risks to help a stranger. Each one moved her a little farther east, passing her along like a secret, a whispered resistance against the men who thought they owned everything. She learned their stories. A blacksmith whose brother had been killed by hired thugs. A widow whose husband had been destroyed by false accusations. A young couple who'd watched their neighbors lose everything to corrupt bankers. All of them had reasons to hate powerful men who operated above the law. And all of them chose to fight back in the only way they could, by helping one person escape. By the time Lila reached Pennsylvania, she'd been traveling for 5 days. She was exhausted, filthy, and running on hope and the kindness of strangers. But she was close. So close. Cape May was another day's travel, maybe less if she could catch the right ride. She was standing at a crossroads trying to decide which direction when a carriage pulled up beside her. Miss Grayson, or should I say Mrs. Cole. Lila's blood turned to ice. She turned slowly. Dawson sat in the carriage, smiling that predatory smile. "We've been waiting for you. Knew you'd have to come this way eventually." "How?" "We've had people watching every route into Cape May for days. Your husband and that old woman tried to draw us north, but we're not idiots. We knew you'd come for the evidence eventually." He opened the carriage door. "Now, you can get in willingly, or my men can make you. But either way, you're coming with us." 4 armed men surrounded her. No escape, no way out. Lila's hand went to her revolver, but Dawson laughed. "Please try. Give my men an excuse." His smile widened. Or you can be smart. Come along quietly. Answer our questions. Maybe we let you live. I don't have what you want. Then you'll take us to it. The lighthouse. That's where your father hid his documents, isn't it? She didn't answer. Didn't have to. Her face gave it away. Excellent, Dawson gestured to the carriage. After you, Mrs. Cole. We're going to Cape May together, and you're going to help us destroy the only evidence that could hurt us. Lila looked at the four armed men, at Dawson's confident smile, at the carriage that might as well be a coffin. Then she looked at the revolver in her hand. 6 bullets. 5 men. Not great odds, but better than surrendering. She raised the gun, not at the men, but at Dawson. Tell your men to back away, or I put a bullet in your brain. Dawson's smile never faltered. You won't shoot me. Won't I? No, because you need me. He leaned back in his seat, completely relaxed. I'm the only one who knows which men are involved in this conspiracy. Kill me, and you'll never know who all your enemies are. You'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. He was right. Lila hated it, but he was right. So here's what's going to happen, Dawson continued. You're going to lower that gun, get in this carriage, and we're all going to Cape May together. You help us find your father's documents. We verify they're all accounted for. Then we let you go. You expect me to believe that? I expect you to recognize you don't have a choice. His voice hardened. 5 seconds, Mrs. Cole. Then my men open fire. They might hit you. They might miss. But in the chaos, a lot of people could die. Including you. Your choice. Lila's hand shook on the gun. She could shoot him. Should shoot him. But then what? His men would kill her. The evidence would stay hidden. And everything she'd suffered would mean nothing. Slowly, hating every second of it, she lowered the gun. Smart girl, Dawson said. Now get in. The carriage ride to Cape May took 3 hours. 3 hours of sitting across from Dawson while his men rode alongside, rifles ready. 3 hours of watching the coastline appear through the trees, smelling salt air that should have meant freedom, but instead felt like a cage closing. You know what fascinates me about you, Mrs. Cole? Dawson said, breaking the silence. You could have stayed quiet. Could have lived your simple life in Wyoming, married to your rancher. We might never have found you. You found me anyway. Because you fought back. Because you made noise. He smiled. That's the mistake people like you always make. Thinking you can win against people like us. People like me? Nobody's. The powerless. He said it casually, like stating a fact of nature. You were born without advantages. Your father was a glorified clerk. You yourself are, well, not what society values, shall we say, and yet you keep fighting like the outcome isn't already decided. Lila's jaw tightened. She'd heard variations of this her entire life, too big, too plain, too poor, too irrelevant. Words designed to make her smaller, quieter, easier to ignore. My father documented crimes, she said. Real crimes committed by real men. That's not nothing. Your father was a coward who got greedy. He could have looked the other way, taken his pay, lived comfortably. Instead, he developed a conscience. Dawson's tone dripped contempt. Conscience is expensive, Mrs. Cole. Your father couldn't afford it. Neither can you. We'll see. Yes, we will. The carriage pulled up to the lighthouse just as the sun began its descent. The structure was exactly as Lila's father had described. White tower rising against the sky, keeper's cottage nestled beside it, windows facing the ocean. The light at the top was dark now, the lighthouse long abandoned. Dawson's men helped him down. He moved with a slight limp Lila hadn't noticed before. Old injury, maybe. Show me where the documents are. I don't know where they are, just that they're here. Then you better start looking. Daylight's fading, and I'd prefer not to be here when night falls. Small towns talk. He gestured to his men. Search the cottage first. Tear it apart if you have to. They broke the door with 2 kicks. Inside, the cottage was frozen in time. Furniture covered in dust sheets, curtains moth-eaten, floor warped from years of coastal weather. The men spread out, yanking open drawers, tearing through cabinets. Lila stood in the main room, trying to see it as her father had. Where would he hide something? What would only she understand? The lighthouse keeper's cottage and count the rotations. 11 seconds of light, 11 seconds of dark. She moved to the window facing the ocean. The view was exactly as he'd described: endless water, sky meeting sea at a razor-sharp horizon. She could imagine her mother standing here, could almost feel the ghost of that story. "Anything?" Dawson asked his men. "Nothing yet. Place is empty." "Keep looking." He turned to Lila. "You have 1 hour. After that, I start assuming you're stalling and things get unpleasant." Lila climbed the stairs to the second floor, 2 small bedrooms, a bathroom with a rusted tub. The men were already pulling up floorboards, checking for hidden compartments. "Think." Her father was methodical, detail-oriented. He wouldn't hide documents somewhere random. It would be deliberate, meaningful, connected to the story. 11 seconds. A pattern. She counted the stairs as she climbed to the lighthouse tower. 22 steps. Twice 11. The tower was narrow, spiral stairs climbing into darkness. At the top, the light mechanism sat silent, massive lens and gears that once rotated, casting that 11-second pattern across the waves. Lila examined it slowly. The gears were frozen with rust, but something about the mechanism caught her attention. One section didn't match the others. Newer metal, less corroded. She reached for it, and Dawson's voice echoed up from below. "Find something?" "Maybe." He climbed laboriously, favoring that bad leg. When he reached the top, breathing hard, he saw where she was looking. "The light mechanism? It's been modified. See here?" She pointed to the newer section. "Someone added this recently, relative to the rest." "Open it." Lila's hands shook as she worked the mechanism. It resisted, then gave with a click. A panel swung open, revealing a hollow space. Inside was a metal box. Dawson snatched it before she could react. He pried it open with a knife, revealing papers, sheaves of them, covered in her father's meticulous handwriting. Ledgers, photocopied documents, names and dates, and dollar amounts. "Finally!" Dawson's smile was triumphant. "Years of searching, and here it is." He flipped through the pages, his expression growing darker. "Your father was thorough. I'll give him that. Every transaction documented, every payoff recorded." He looked up. "This would destroy a dozen men, powerful men." "Good." "Good?" Dawson laughed. "You still don't understand. This doesn't destroy us. It destroys you." "What?" "We're taking these documents, burning them, and then we're walking away, and you get to live the rest of your mediocre life knowing you lost." He tucked the box under his arm. "Your father died for nothing. You suffered for nothing. And the men he tried to expose will continue exactly as they were." Rage, white-hot and pure, flooded through Lila. "No." "No?" Dawson raised an eyebrow. "You planning to stop me? You're unarmed, outnumbered, and frankly, outmatched in every way that matters." "Maybe." Lila's voice was steady despite the fury coursing through her. "But you made one mistake." "What's that?" "You assume nobody else knows I'm here." Dawson's smile faltered. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Lila moved to the window, looked down at the ground below. "You spent so much effort tracking me, watching the roads. Did you ever stop to think about who might be watching you?" "There's no one. My husband is a rancher. He knows tracking. He knows patience. And he knows how to wait for the right moment." Lila met Dawson's eyes. "He's been here for hours, watching, waiting to see what you'd do." It was a desperate gamble. Lila had no idea if Ethan was anywhere nearby, but she'd learned something in these weeks of running, fighting, surviving. Powerful men like Dawson were used to control, to certainty. Introduce doubt, and they hesitated. Dawson moved to the window, scanning the grounds below. His men were spread out around the cottage, but the area was dotted with dunes, scrub brush, places to hide. "I don't see anyone," he said, but his voice carried less certainty. "You wouldn't, not until it was too late." Lila took a step closer. "Here's what I think happens next. You try to leave with those documents, and somewhere between here and your carriage, someone takes a shot. Maybe they hit you. Maybe they hit one of your men. Either way, chaos. Confusion. And in that chaos, I take the documents back." "You're insane." "No, I'm desperate. Different thing." She held out her hand. "Give me the box, Dawson. Walk away while you still can." For a moment, genuine uncertainty crossed his face. Then it hardened into anger. You're bluffing. There's no one out there. He turned toward the stairs. Lila grabbed his arm. He shoved her hard, and she stumbled backward, her injured shoulder screaming. The box fell from his grip, paper scattering. They both lunged for it. Dawson was faster, grabbing the box, but Lila grabbed the papers. They tore, ripped, both of them holding fragments. Let go, Dawson snarled. No. He raised his hand to hit her. The blow never landed. A gunshot cracked from outside. One of Dawson's men shouted. Then another shot, and another. Dawson's head snapped toward the window. What? Ethan's voice carried up from below. Drop your weapons. You're surrounded. Lila's heart leaped. He was here. He'd actually been here. Dawson's face went white with rage. He grabbed Lila by the throat, hauled her to the window where his men could see. Cole, I've got your wife. You shoot again. She dies. The shooting stopped. Tense silence filled the air. Let her go, Dawson, Ethan called. It's over. It's over when I say it's over. Dawson's grip tightened on Lila's throat. She clawed at his hands, gasping. You're going to let us walk out of here or I snap her neck. You do that, you lose your only leverage. I'll take that risk. Dawson was panicking now, the careful control gone. I didn't come this far to lose to a nobody from Philadelphia. Lila's vision was starting to blur. Her fingers scrabbled uselessly at Dawson's hands. She was going to pass out, going to die in this lighthouse while the evidence that could have saved her scattered across the floor. Then her hand brushed something. The metal box dropped at their feet. Heavy, solid weapon. She grabbed it with her last bit of strength and swung blindly. The edge caught Dawson across the temple. His grip loosened. Lila swung again, putting everything behind it. Dawson stumbled backward. His bad leg gave out. He crashed into the lighthouse mechanism, gears shrieking. His weight was too much for the rusted structure. The floor beneath him gave way with a horrible groan of tearing metal. Dawson fell, not far, maybe 10 feet to the landing below. But he hit hard, his scream cutting off with a sickening crunch. Lila stared down at his crumpled form. He wasn't moving. Lila! Ethan was climbing the stairs, taking them 3 at a time. He burst into the tower room and grabbed her. Are you hurt? I'm fine, she pointed down at Dawson. Is he? Don't know, don't care. Ethan held her tight for a moment, then released her. We need to move. His men are still out there. Beth? Outside with the sheriff. Real sheriff this time. I sent him a telegram from Pittsburgh explaining everything. He's been investigating Blackwell's firm for months, had his own suspicions about Winters. How did you know to come here? Because I know you knew you'd head straight for the evidence no matter what. He started gathering the scattered papers. Is this it? Is this what your father hid? Yes. Everything. Names, transactions, proof. Lila helped him collect the documents, hands shaking. Dawson was going to destroy them. Not anymore. Ethan looked down at Dawson's still form. Come on, let's finish this. Outside the scene was controlled chaos. Dawson's men were disarmed, sitting in the sand with their hands bound. Beth stood over them with her shotgun, looking grimly satisfied. A man in a sheriff's badge was checking the bindings. Mrs. Cole, he said when he saw Lila. Sheriff Morrison. Real one, not the imposter you met in Cheyenne. Are you all right? I'll live. Good, because I'm going to need your testimony about everything that happened. He looked at the documents Ethan carried. That the evidence? Yes. Then we've got them. All of them. Morrison's smile was cold. I've been building a case against Blackwell and his associates for 2 years, never had enough proof. But this is everything I needed. One of his deputies emerged from the lighthouse. Sheriff, Dawson's alive, barely. He's asking for a doctor. He'll get one, after he tells us who else was involved. Morrison turned to Lila. This is going to be big. Men in Washington, New York, Philadelphia, you've handed me the biggest corruption case in a decade. What about me? Lila asked. That warrant, the wanted posters, all fake. I'll make sure that's known. You're a witness now, not a suspect. He paused. Your father would be proud. He tried to do this alone and failed. You succeeded. Lila wasn't sure succeeded was the right word. She felt hollowed out, exhausted, like she'd run a race that had no finish line. But the documents were safe, and The men who'd killed her father would face justice. That had to count for something. Beth put an arm around her shoulders. You did good, girl. We did good. All of us. Lila looked at Ethan. I couldn't have. I know. He took her hand. But you did. That's what matters. The next 3 weeks were a blur. Testimony to federal investigators. Newspaper reporters hungry for every detail of the corruption scandal that was tearing through Philadelphia's elite. Watching as the men who'd seemed untouchable were arrested, their assets frozen, their reputations destroyed. Winters was among them. Turned out Caroline had been right. Her father had been one of the men Lila's father had documented. He'd helped hunt Lila not to protect her, but to protect himself. When federal marshals came for him, he tried to run. Didn't make it far. How do you feel about it? Ethan asked one evening as they sat in a Philadelphia hotel room. The trial was set to begin in 2 days. Honestly, I don't know. Lila stared at the ceiling. I thought I'd feel triumphant, vindicated. Instead, I just feel tired. That's normal. Is it? You've been running for months, fighting for your life. Now it's over, and your body doesn't know what to do with that. He shifted closer. Give it time. What happens after the trial? We go home. Back to Wyoming. Back to the ranch. He paused. If you still want to, that is. Lila turned to look at him. Why wouldn't I? Because now you're free. Really free. You don't have to be married to me anymore. Don't have to live on a remote ranch working yourself to exhaustion. You could stay here. Start fresh. Build whatever life you want. Is that what you want? For me to leave? No. His voice was rough. But it's what you deserve. A choice. Not a necessity. Lila thought about the ranch, the endless sky, the hard work that left her exhausted but satisfied. The way Ethan looked at her now, not like she was a burden or a problem to solve, but like she was someone who mattered. I choose the ranch, she said. I choose you. Not because I have to. Because I want to. Relief flooded his expression. You're sure? I'm sure. She took his hand. I've spent my whole life being told I was too much or not enough. Too big, too plain, too ordinary. But at that ranch, doing that work, standing beside you, I felt like I was exactly right. Like I fit. You do fit. You always did. Ethan pulled her close. And for the record, you're not ordinary. You're the toughest person I've ever met. Tough enough to survive marriage to you? That's the real test, he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. The trial was brutal. Days of testimony, of reliving her father's death and everything that followed. The defense attorneys tried to discredit her, claimed she was unreliable, emotional, that her size indicated lack of discipline and credibility. Lila sat through it all with her head high, answering every question truthfully. And when they brought out her father's documents, when expert witnesses confirmed their authenticity, when the evidence became impossible to deny, she watched the defendants' faces crumble. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, returned guilty verdicts on all counts. 15 men went to prison. Fortunes were seized. Political careers ended. And Marcus Grayson's name was cleared. Your father would be proud, the prosecutor told Lila after sentencing. He tried to expose them and paid with his life. You finished what he started. I had help. The best fights are never fought alone. They left Philadelphia on a cold November morning. Ethan, Lila, and Beth, who'd decided she'd had enough of Wyoming winters and was heading to California instead. You'll write? Beth asked as they said goodbye at the station. Every week, Lila promised. And you'll name your first daughter after me. Lila laughed. If we have a daughter, you'll be the first to know. Beth hugged her tight. You're going to be fine, better than fine. You're going to thrive. Because of you, because of what you taught me. I didn't teach you anything you didn't already know. Just helped you remember you're stronger than the world tells you. Beth released her, turned to Ethan. You take care of her. She takes care of herself, Ethan said. I just try to keep up. They boarded the westbound train as the sun rose. Lila pressed her face to the window, watching Philadelphia disappear. The city that had been her prison was finally, truly behind her. Any regrets? Ethan asked. About leaving? No. She leaned against him. About everything that happened to get here? Some. but I can't regret where I ended up. Where's that? Here, with you, heading home. Home. The word felt right in a way it never had before. Not the house in Philadelphia where her father had worked himself to death. Not the desperate escape to Wyoming, but the ranch, their ranch, where she'd learned she was capable of more than she'd ever imagined. The train carried them west across America, through states Lila had crossed in desperation, now seeing them with different eyes. The same landscape, but transformed by context. She wasn't running anymore. She was choosing. They reached Bitter Springs 3 weeks later, in the early morning when frost still clung to the ground. Tom was waiting with the wagon. Mrs. Cole, he tipped his hat. Good to see you back. Ranch survived fine, but it's been quiet without you two. The ride to the ranch was familiar and strange all at once. Everything looked the same, the endless plains, the mountains in the distance, the big sky that had terrified Lila when she first arrived. But now it felt like breathing room instead of exposure. The house came into view, still small, still weathered, still in need of repairs. But the sight of it made Lila's chest tight with something that felt like belonging. Ethan helped her down from the wagon. Welcome home. It really is, isn't it? Lila looked at the house, the barn, the land stretching to the horizon. Home. They settled back into ranch life slowly. The work was still hard. Cattle still needed feeding, fences still needed mending, winter still came with brutal cold. But Lila approached it differently now. Not as someone desperately trying to prove she deserved to be there, but as someone who knew she belonged. The town's attitude shifted too. Word had spread about the trial, about what Lila had done. People who'd whispered about the mail-order bride who didn't fit now greeted her with respect. Some even with admiration. Caroline Winters showed up one afternoon, alone. Mrs. Cole, she said, may I speak with you? Lila invited her in, made coffee. They sat in awkward silence until Caroline finally said, I wanted to apologize for how I treated you when you first arrived. I was cruel. You were scared. That's not an excuse. Caroline's hands twisted in her lap. I've spent my whole life being told my only value was in being pretty and marriageable. When you arrived, someone who didn't fit that mold but still found a husband, still found a place, it threatened everything I believed about how the world worked. And now? Now my father's in prison, and I'm working in the general store to pay off his debts. And I'm realizing pretty doesn't count for much when everything else falls apart. She looked up. You were strong when I was petty. I'm sorry. Apology accepted. Lila refilled her coffee. What will you do now? Survive. Figure out who I am without his money, his plans for me. Maybe leave Bitter Springs. Find somewhere I can start fresh. She paused. Is it strange, being so different from what people expect? It used to be. Now it's just who I am. Lila thought about the journey that had brought her here. I spent years trying to be smaller, quieter, more acceptable, trying to fit into spaces that weren't made for me. It was exhausting. So what changed? I stopped asking permission to exist, stopped waiting for the world to make room for me, and made room for myself. She met Caroline's eyes. You'll figure it out. Not today, maybe, but eventually. After Caroline left, Ethan found Lila on the porch, watching the sunset. You were kind to her, he said. She needed it, and kindness doesn't cost anything. Except sometimes it does. She wasn't kind to you. No, but holding grudges is heavy, and I'm tired of carrying unnecessary weight. Lila leaned against him. I spent too long being angry at people who underestimated me. It didn't change them, just made me bitter. You're not bitter now. No. Now I'm just tired and weirdly happy. He laughed. Weirdly happy? My father's dead. I was hunted across the country. I stabbed a man and watched another fall through a floor. My life was threatened more times than I can count. She looked up at him. And somehow, I'm happier than I've ever been. That's weird, right? Maybe. Or maybe you just found where you're supposed to be. He pulled her closer. You know what I think? What? I think you're not happy despite everything that happened. You're happy because of it, because it proved you were stronger than anyone, including you, ever believed. Lila thought about that. About the girl who'd stepped off the stagecoach months ago, terrified and desperate. About everything she'd learned since, how to shoot, how to ride, how to stand her ground. how to trust people worth trusting, how to fight for something beyond survival. Maybe you're right, she said. I usually am. You'll learn that eventually. She elbowed him, and he laughed. Winter came hard that year. Snow piled against the house, wind howled across the plains, temperatures dropped until the cold seemed to seep into your bones. But the house held. The cattle survived. And Lila discovered she was stronger than Wyoming winter, which was saying something. Spring arrived with mud and new calves and work that started before dawn and ended after dark. Lila worked alongside Ethan. Their partnership settled into something comfortable, easy. The marriage that had started as an arrangement had become real somewhere along the way. Not in a dramatic moment, but in 1,000 small ones. Shared coffee at dawn, quiet conversations by firelight, the way his hand found hers without thinking. They were sitting on the porch one evening in late May when Ethan said, "You ever think about what your father would say if he could see you now?" Lila considered. "I think he'd be surprised. I was never the daughter he wanted, too big, too clumsy, too ordinary, but maybe he'd see I was the daughter he needed, someone stubborn enough to finish what he started." "You're more than that, I know, but it's taken me a long time to know it." She looked at the ranch, at the land she'd learned to work, at the life she'd built from necessity and desperation and sheer refusal to quit. "I used to think being underestimated was the worst thing, that if people just saw me differently, everything would be easier. And now? Now I think being underestimated gave me an advantage. People expected me to fail, to give up, to break. When I didn't, they never saw it coming." She smiled. "Turns out the girl everyone dismissed was tougher than the men who hunted her. Not tougher, smarter. Maybe both." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun painted the sky orange and pink. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. The sound that had frightened Lila when she first arrived now just meant home. "You know what I learned?" she said eventually. "What's that?" "Strength isn't about being what people expect. It's about being yourself so completely that their expectations stop mattering." She took Ethan's hand. "You helped me learn that. You already knew it, I just reminded you. Then thank you for the reminder." The years that followed weren't easy. Ranch life never was. There were droughts and hard winters, cattle that died and crops that failed, injuries and setbacks and days when giving up seemed like the only reasonable option. But Lila never did give up. She learned to rope and brand, to deliver calves and doctor sick animals. She learned to read weather and manage accounts and negotiate with buyers who tried to lowball her because she was a woman. She learned to stand in town meetings and speak her mind, to ignore the whispers and sideways looks, to exist loudly in a world that kept trying to make her smaller. And slowly, grudgingly, the world adjusted to her instead of the other way around. People stopped seeing the mail-order bride who didn't fit the picture. They saw Lila Cole, rancher, survivor, the woman who'd taken down corrupt men in Philadelphia and then gone home to work cattle like it was nothing. They told stories about her, embellished them, made them bigger. The girl who'd outrun hired guns, the woman who'd jumped through windows and hopped freight trains, the wife who'd crossed the country to save her husband. Some of it was true. Some was exaggeration. Lila didn't bother correcting anyone, let them make her a legend if they wanted. She was too busy living to worry about the stories. 5 years after returning to Wyoming, Lila stood in the same spot where she'd first seen the ranch. But everything looked different now. The house was bigger. They'd added 2 rooms. The barn stood straight. The fences were solid. The land thrived. Ethan came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. She leaned back against him, comfortable with his weight. "Remember the first time you stood here?" he asked. "I was terrified. Thought I'd made a horrible mistake. And now? Now I know I made the best decision of my life." She turned in his arms. "Coming here, marrying you, refusing to run when they came for me. I'm glad you stayed." "Me too." Their daughter, named Beth, as promised, toddled out of the house, chasing chickens with determined 3-year-old focus. She had Lila's build, already bigger than other children her age, already learning that the world would try to make that mean something it didn't. But she also had her mother's stubborn refusal to quit, her father's steady strength. She would be fine. "What do we tell her?" Ethan asked, watching their daughter. "When she asks about what happened, about Philadelphia and everything after?" "The truth. That powerful people tried to break us. that we fought back, that we won. Lila paused. And that winning didn't make everything easy, but it made everything possible. Think she'll understand, eventually, when she needs to? Lila smiled. For now, she just needs to know she's loved, that she matters, that she doesn't have to be anything except herself. They stood together, watching their daughter play, the Wyoming sky endless above them. The past was buried in Philadelphia courtrooms and corrupt men's prison cells. The future was uncertain, it always was. But the present was this: land they'd worked, a life they'd built, love they'd chosen. Lila thought about the girl she'd been, stepping off that stagecoach with nothing but desperation and hope. About the journey that had turned necessity into belonging. About learning that strength wasn't about fitting into spaces made for others, but about creating your own space and defending it. She thought about her father, dead in his study with fear in his eyes. About all the people who tried to make her small, quiet, forgettable. About proving them wrong not by becoming something different, but by being exactly who she was, just louder. And she thought about the lesson buried in all of it, the truth that had taken crossing a country and fighting powerful men to learn. The world tells you who you're supposed to be, tells you what you're worth based on how you look, where you come from, who your people are. And you can spend your whole life trying to live up to those expectations, trying to fit into boxes that were never made for you. Or you can break the boxes, build your own. Live so fully and fiercely that the world has no choice but to make room. Lila had chosen to break the boxes, had chosen to be impossible to ignore, impossible to dismiss, impossible to defeat. Not because she was perfect, she wasn't. Not because it was easy, it never was. But because she'd learned the most important lesson: underestimated people are dangerous. Not in spite of being overlooked, but because of it. Because while everyone's watching the expected threats, the quiet ones, the dismissed ones, the ones nobody saw coming, they're the ones who change everything. And sometimes, the girl everyone underestimated becomes the woman nobody can forget. That was worth fighting for. That was worth everything.